Welcome everybody, here Brady from BGWX, and we are back for another breakdown of the tropics. We are breaking down what is soon to be probably already Hurricane Humberto at this point, and 94L, and soon to be Tropical Storm Imelda within the next day or two. Gabrielle is no longer a hurricane post-tropical, even though it's affecting the Azores Islands and the Iberian Peninsula soon. But without further ado, let's deep dive and let's get started here. So, as we take a look here into the tropics, we'll notice this is 94L here over Hispaniola and Puerto Rico and moving towards the Bahamas. Still, you can see rather disorganized compared to Humberto, which is, if I had to guess, likely already a hurricane. There's just not enough evidence to officially support that for the National Hurricane Center's standard, but I would say this is already at least a Category 1 hurricane, if not a mid-grade Category 1 hurricane, at least, potentially. So, when we take a look here, let's dive into long wave imagery. We can take a look here at Humberto, and one thing that stands out here as we zoom in is notice we can start to see a little bit of that eye wall starting to pop a little bit. You can see, and you can start to see a little bit of an eye start to form here. If we take a look right around here, we can see we have our eye wall forming, a little bit of the eye starting to pop. It seems like if somewhere around that area it appears, I would say there's a good bit somewhere in there. That's where our eye wall is, somewhere around that area. So we'll start. I don't think that's an eye clearing quite yet. I think that's just more of a, it could be, I'm not going to say. We'll see over the next few frames. That's certainly possible over the next 30 60 minutes. We'll keep an eye, even if it's not quite ready yet to clear, if I had to guess. But we're probably in the phase of watching first potential real bout of rapid intensification for Humberto. And the reason we're looking at that is, take a look too at the outflow. I mean, it is gorgeous what's starting to happen here. A little bit still being pressed here from 94L, just a little bit, but as you take a look here, take a look at the outflow starting to really expand here. You can see to the north here. Look at this, just continuing this serious outflow here. You can see here on the IR imagery here on satellite, and take a look and just starting to see this rotate down shear here, this convection. We're starting to see it kind of, once you start to see that convection sit into the area where it's being affected by some wind shear, as you can see some a little bit of dry air wrapping around the system a little bit to cut into it a little bit. So it's not the perfect environment right now, but take a look at that expansion, especially to the northwest of the outflow, as we do have that jet streak to the north from the tail end of Gabrielle. You take a look at the PWAT, you can kind of see that here. As we look at just the moisture levels, you can see this is Gabrielle out here, and you can see the tail end of the front here, and this is helping to spin the top a little bit faster right now, and that's why you see that big expansion to the north of the outflow, and that's allowing the system to intensify. Tonight, slowly intensified today, about 20 miles an hour from over the course of the day's period. We saw from late last night, we saw it where it was a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And then over the next about 18 hours, 15 to 18 hours, we saw that 20-mile-an-hour intensification. So not rapid intensification, but a steady intensification, kind of like we were talking about as we were expecting last night, roughly. Like I said, we weren't expecting any rapid intensification quite yet, but I think now we're starting to look at that period, and you can see that evident. Look at the organization, the tightening here on the moisture, and to the left you can see 94L, which we're going to deep dive more into in a second. But here's the thing with Humberto too, you got to remember, is the environment is only going to continue to get more favorable. And we'll take a look at the environment as well for 94L and break that down, soon to be Imelda. But take a look here as you notice, this is right around where we see Humberto, and we'll show you here on the P-type map. You see that is where Humberto is right now. And if we slide back to the 200 millibar winds here, what you'll notice is, take a look here. You can see that right here, this feature here, this upper level low, I do believe. Let me check here. Yes, this upper level low here sitting out over in the Atlantic. And what this is actually going to do, I think it's going to help. It's the perfect placement where we have this giant, like we talked about, upper level anticyclone. I think this is going to be a fantastic environment. I think some people are questioning whether Humberto can actually get very strong. I'm gonna disagree completely with those that say that Humberto is not going to become, a powerful major hurricane. I think it very will be. I think it's going to be at a minimum a major hurricane. I think the environment is way too supportive. You have multiple upper level anticyclones within this big ULAC, you could argue. This big area that is going to basically, what this means is an upper level anticyclone is supportive for hurricanes to strengthen, right? There's a lack of wind shear within this area. You can see the stronger winds around it, but also notice you have this jet streak to the north, perfectly placed to help spin the top faster. So there's no real strong wind shear across this area. And then you also have this cutoff low now to the east, which is even a little bit stronger and a little bit different on the placement than it was showing a couple days ago than modeled. And this was a really unique feature. So it's not like it was an easy thing for models to pick up on. And in terms of the placement near Umberto, this is perfectly placed. Now we have that dual enhanced outflow feature that we talk about oftentimes I like to reference, because this is definitely something to watch for, where we have that jet streak to the north, which helps spin storm this way, right? Because hurricanes spin like this. And then we also have right here, you can see from this upper level low, stronger wind shear to the east. And so this is how wind shear can help enhance the outflow of the system, help spin the top faster, because remember, it's a 3D vertical column. And if you're giving a better environment for the system to vent air out, remember they start at the surface, but if you're able to allow the top of the system to be able, to mid levels, upper levels, to vent the system out faster, this hurricane, and that is going to allow a system to be able to intensify more rapidly, more quicker. It's going to allow that from the low levels to through the mid levels and upper levels, it's going to allow this to become better stacked, and allow a more intense, allow a more significant intensification process to happen. And that is what I am watching for here. When it comes to Umberto, I think this is going to be a pretty powerful storm. I don't see 94L being be able to impact enough, even if we do see Fujiwhara. Oftentimes, people think that the wind shear on that side should just tear apart, and work against the other system. But oftentimes, when we see the Fujiwhara effect take place, it's a more of a dance, and you oftentimes can see the wind shear kind of go around the system itself versus go into the system. What I mean by that, let's say if we had 94L, I don't want to exactly place it, but somewhere around here, and you had Umberto here. I think it's a little bit further west, but let's say you had it here and you had Umberto here, and it's still not that strong quite yet. That the wind shear would try to, if we start seeing Fujiwhara effect take place, would try to go around it more. We can see sometimes with that. That's not to say that the wind shear on this side can't affect it at times. But just when we see that, it's more of a tango and a dance, like we mentioned last night. There's a process that goes on, whether these two can sometimes bounce off of each other. These two can rotate around each other. Or sometimes the stronger one can absorb the other one. So we have still several different scenarios that can take place. I think Umberto is going to be a powerful major hurricane, in my opinion. Its track, that is the biggest question, I think. It really depends on its interaction with 94L, which, let's get into that aspect now of 94L. So this is what we got. Let's go back to the mimic here. This is when I look at this system here. It's still very disorganized. And I don't mean it in that it's a mess. It's messy, but it's not. Meaning that we still have this large area, that we don't have a clear, consolidated, low-level center yet. Because why? It's a lot, partially because it's over land. but it's still gaining organization. We have vorticity, we have moisture coming off of South America right now. It's another thing to mention. The uh, intertropical convergence zone, ITCZ, is also helping to pump moisture into Umberto right now as well. But it's also off of South America. We're seeing vorticity and convergence off the land masses help form better vorticity, low level vorticity and convergence to help these thunderstorms start to better organize around a low level center, ideally for this system. Not that it's ideal, just saying ideally for the system as a tropical, if we're looking at it from a tropical perspective. And they were also seeing likely some low level convergence from the islands themselves here in the Caribbean, likely help enhance some of the spin here in this area that we're starting to see here on moisture as well. And this is going to allow, like we mentioned last night. So this is what's going to, earlier this morning, however you want to view it. And so that we're starting to see that spin now take place. We'll use Earth null as an example. You can see that it's still lacking a clear consolidated area. It's a bit messy, but what we do know is, again, Earth null is not perfect, but just gives you a somewhat decent representation. So what we do know about the system is now this whole area is what we're watching to start continuing to consolidate tomorrow, today, whatever you want to call it, and this will continue to continue to consolidate and move northwest. And once that happens, that's when we'll start to see that intensification and organization of a tropical cyclone take place over the next day or two. I would say likely tomorrow or within 36 hours we will have a tropical cyclone. I would say almost I don't have much doubt in that, even if it's a weaker one. And then after that, this is where the questions come in intensification. I would say at a minimum some slow intensification takes place, but things get tricky. You notice you still do have some dry air to the north here, so potentially it could work against the system at any point to try to filter in something you have to keep an eye on. Not as prevalent, dry air to the north and west. As you can see, we have showers and thunderstorms here, so not as prevalent. We do still have Humberto to the east. Again, we talked about that discussion with wind shear. I think these two are going to be able to work in tandem to each other, at least be their own entity enough, to be able to make something of itself. Whether this one becomes a major hurricane as well, I wouldn't lean for it, but I would also say it's certainly possible based on the upper level environment that we're going to take a look at. It could end up being a little bit of a hybrid system as well, as it if it were to make a landfall, so to say, in the East Coast. And that's something we'll need to watch. But regardless, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, Bahamas, Cuba, we have to keep an eye on the potential for significant flooding rains, especially for some of these mountainous areas that, we start looking at the mudslide potential and all those, the different low-lying areas just off of the high terrain. So that's something to very much keep an eye on as well. Bahamas especially, significant flooding could be in store, as it will slowly meander through the Bahamas for days. So, so that will be something we'll have to keep a very close eye on for those people as well, that if you do happen to live there or know anybody. Or if you're on vacation, Will's, or maybe you don't know. So we'll see about that, but it will continue to move northwest over the next couple days or so, and then from there, its track again will solely depend, not solely, I should say, but significantly depend on its interaction with Humberto as well, which will continue to move northwest as well over the next few days. As so, both of these systems will not have a fast rate of speed in terms of movement as well. So that's what we got going on. Now let's take a look at the environment for potential intensification for Humberto. We take a look here, and this is something you got to keep an eye on here. Remember, we talked about that jet streak to the north. That is going to be present. Now the question is, something I would keep an eye on is the exact placement of, there's right there. So that is where 94L is, currently soon to be Imelda likely, but we take a look here. Can we take a look? I believe we can. There we go. So this is about where I believe Imelda was forecasted to be about 48 hours from now. And that is where I'm going to go and zoom in here. And boom. So this is where we take a look. Perfectly placed under this part of the upper level anticyclone. So that is where, assuming the low level center isn't directly on top of land, which certainly could play a part, maybe not inhibit it necessarily given all the surrounding water. That's the thing you have to remember, that they can still intensify even if moving over land. That can be a myth a little bit, that if it's over land it can't intensify. You can go to the brown ocean effect with the, I forget what storm, but Oklahoma with that. But given so much surrounding water, it can still intensify, especially with this kind of environment. But especially if it's not the exact inner core, low level center is not over land or multiple land masses, then we could possibly allow for a more rapid rate of intensification. And you can also take of note that Humberto is over here. And then you also have to watch this jet streak right here. This is what I'm watching. So also, though, I will say there is a little bit of wind shear to the west here. So I would keep an eye on that. That could potentially inhibit just a little bit. Something we'll have to keep an eye on if that were to approach a little bit closer. Or become under modeled. That's something I would keep an eye on as well. But this placement here of the upper level divergence is very ideal and supportive, because under the upper level anticyclone we have under the ULAC, and then under this jet streak here to the north as well. Very, very supportive environment for potentially a strong hurricane. Now, got to remember the interaction with Humberto. There's a Fujiwhara effect that has to take place as well. So it could be doing a little bit of tango, and it could be unable to get as strong as necessary due to the fact that there is going to be another hurricane right next to it. And I guess you could say the same about Humberto as well. But Humberto is likely going to be stronger before this guy, because Humberto has had a head start. And it's going to be in a very favorable environment as well for intensification. So there's all these little different details, but as it continues to slowly maneuver, it may then start to have a little bit of trouble depending on where exactly it is, and we'll have to keep an eye on it. But then we look at this environment here, and I mean, this could really turn into a very favorable environment depending on exactly the exact placement of these two. I mean, that's a notable ULAC right there, with very good placement potentially of the upper level divergence to the north, meaning that wind shear to the north. Zoom in here. Wind shear to the north here really could help spin the top faster. But again, it will depend on how these two interact as well. Assuming somewhere in here, probably. So that's something we have to keep an eye on, because if there's many different scenarios where, so you have one storm here and another here. Do these two kind of play with each other a little bit? They're the guy that can, play on the monkey bars in the schoolyard a little bit, have some fun. Who knows? I'm just making up stuff. You use as an analogy, but do they rotate around each other? Do they become able to bounce off of one another? Does Humberto bounce off of Imelda, future Imelda, and Imelda continues to go towards the coast? This is more unlikely, but does Humberto slide around Imelda, and does Imelda slide out behind it then? And then Humberto makes a landfall somewhere along the east coast. That's another possible scenario, more unlikely based on guidance suggesting, but not impossible as well. Or do the two combine? Do these two combine with one another, become some sort of hybrid system likely at that point, and then start to move north and then west? This is not the most likely scenario, maybe more likely than the last scenario I depicted, but then have impacts potentially along the East Coast as well. So there's many different scenarios. Regardless, there's even if it doesn't make a landfall, we could have significant flooding, rainfall, and strong winds and rip currents and big waves along these portions of the East Coast. But especially the heavy rainfall would be a concern, even if it does not make landfall. So we have many different options to keep a very close eye on at this point, and I thought, we would break it down in depth on what to watch for. So hopefully this helps kind of give an idea of all the little details that, I'm going to be watching very closely with these systems over the upcoming days. And is that an eye? It could be an eye there. That could be an eye. That very well could be an eye with Humberto. So, as I'm finishing this recording, so something to keep an eye on there. That looks a lot like is already a hurricane, an intensifying hurricane. We'll see how strong she's able to get. He or she, doesn't matter. Is able to get tomorrow. All right, hopefully that provided some good insight for you all. Again, if you do have questions or comments, you can leave them below the video. I'm more than happy to engage with you all. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please leave a like. That does help tremendously. I say it every time, but it really does. And until next time, peace, everybody.